We interrupt this broadcast to bring you Beyond the Box, a theological discussion forum brought to you by Quartz Hill School of Theology.
Oh, I'm a failure because I haven't got a brain.
Beyond the Box, www.whatson.net.
Welcome to Beyond the Box, and we are broadcasting again. It is Saturday, July 1st.
And this is our last Saturday show.
That's right. We will be moving to Thursday nights starting July 6th.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You actually have your thing on this time instead of half the show we hear you in a box.
And you want to hear me beyond the box.
That's right. Well, would you like to give our information to people?
Sure.
And tell them what we're going to talk about today?
We are talking about the theological implications of science.
Modern science.
Modern science. Okay, and I hadn't looked at the topic he told me on the way here. If you want to join in the discussion with us, you can IM us on AOL's Instant Messenger. The screen name is The Box Show. And if you want to ICQ us, boy, 2 weeks not doing this, and I'm like, my head's like pudding. But okay, our ICQ number is 570-53108. Our toll-free number in the United States is 888-987-3100. And the number here in the Antelope Valley is 538-2030. You can also email us at thebox@theology.edu. So that's how you may get in touch with us. And he's thumbing through a book, and I'm filling up space.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, so today's topic is the theological implications of modern science, and I thought I would start by having someone read something out of God and the Astronomers by Robert Jastrow. This was published back in...
Jastrow.
Jastrow.
like Astro.
Yeah, it's published in 1978 by...
All right, Raj.
by W.W. Norton Company. And it's just an interesting little thing here. Let's see. Okay, start reading here on page 114.
Where do I end?
Oh, you will end...
At the end?
At the end of the chapter.
Okay. Science has proven that the universe... Consider the enormity of the problem. Science has proven that the universe exploded into being at a certain moment. It asks, what cause produced this effect? Who or what put the matter and energy into the universe? Was the universe created out of nothing, or was it gathered together out of pre-existing materials? And science cannot answer these questions because, according to the astronomers, in the first moments of its existence, the universe was compressed to an extraordinary degree and consumed by the heat of a fire beyond human imagination. The shock of that instant must have destroyed every particle of evidence that could have yielded a clue to the cause of the great explosion. An entire world rich in structure and history may have existed before our universe appeared, but if it did, science cannot tell what kind of world it was. A sound explanation may exist for the explosive birth of our universe, but if it does, science cannot find out what that explanation is. The scientist's pursuit of the past ends in the moment of creation. This is an exceedingly strange development, unexpected by all but the theologians. They have always accepted the word of the Bible. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, to which St. Augustine added, "Who can understand this mystery or explain it to others?" The development is unexpected because science has such extraordinary success in tracing the chain of cause and effect backward in time. We have been able to connect the appearance of man on this planet to the crossing of the threshold of life, the manufacture of the chemical ingredients of life within stars that have long since expired, the formation of those stars out of the primal mists, and the expansion and cooling of the parent cloud of gases out of the cosmic fireball. Now we would like to pursue the inquiry farther back in time, but the barrier to further progress seems insurmountable. It is not a matter of another year, another decade of work, another measurement, or another theory. At this moment, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries.
I just think it's a funny quote.
That is funny.
So that's kind of our topic for today, which is modern science, not just dealing with cosmology, but any aspect of modern science that we might care to discuss. For instance, the mapping of the human genome. What implications may that have? What does that tell us about who we are as human beings? Today in the mail at the school, we just got Progress in Theology, the newsletter of the John Templeton Foundation. And the cover article is Extended Life, Eternal Life. Is longer life always good? And it's dealing with the issue of the improvement in human longevity and the potential for human immortality thanks to improvements in medical science and our understanding of the process of aging. And so what implications might that have for us? So those are the sorts of things that we could talk about.
There was just a thing on the news, although I didn't watch it. It was one of the teaser things. And I was going somewhere, and so I wasn't there to see it. But they said that now it might be possible for women to delay menopause by 10 years, which...
That's not a bad thing.
Well, from the standpoint of bone deterioration and stuff, it's not a bad thing, but from the standpoint of 10 more years, forget it. I'm like not doing well with these headsets here.
What's wrong with them?
I feel like somebody's got their fingers in my ear.
Oh, is one of them not, is it plugged in?
Yeah, it's plugged in. And is my volume, this volume up is maximum here.
Yeah.
I can hear you, but I can't hear myself.
Okay, is it in only one ear or both of them?
Well, I thought I had figured it out that I had the wrong... You talk.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We're now experiencing some technical difficulties.
I feel like I'm underwater. I'll just talk. I can hear you guys.
You can hear us.
So
really.
We don't really need the headsets. We can hear each other. So it's just like I've got my head in a bucket.
Oh,
but anyway, back to extending life. And
and menopause,
aging, and stuff.
That would seem like a good development
from the standpoint of deterioration of your body
and health.
And health and stuff like that. Yeah, that's very good. The
idea of having to
do that for another 10 years.
Well, also that would increase the
population.
Potentially. Mm-hmm. We do have birth control. I
know, but you can have children.
People do make choices.
Well, it doesn't mean that you could necessarily have children longer.
Well, assuming that you haven't exhausted your supply of eggs,
which you can borrow.
That would mean potentially that you, of course, thanks to science, even if you have exhausted your pool of eggs, you can and are menopausal, you can still have children.
Cool.
So what's the record now? 50-something or 60-something-year-old woman having a child?
Yeah.
So
there was some lady that she had twins, I think,
and
there was a
song,
her
I am
adult
my own
daughters
grandpa,
were home.
So they can become both mother and grandmother at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what that happened with the one lady I'm thinking of. She gave birth to children for her daughter.
Okay, this was a different lady that she just was
wanting a child.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think it was quite accidental. They weren't expecting it, and she's a lot older.
Oh.
And her daughters were in their 30s.
Of course,
40s, and they're holding their baby sister, and the one girl is going, I just can't believe she's my little sister. She's like, I feel more like she's like my daughter, So, but I'm trying to remember if it's the same person. I think it may have been a multiple birth, but I don't remember.
I do not
exactly.
recall either. It's been a while.
Well, let's quit muttering to ourselves.
Back to the topic at hand.
Well, it's kind of the point of the topics at hand is for us to jabber on for 2 hours and fill up space.
Oh. Okay.
So we don't bore people.
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
That's right.
Oh, we weren't supposed to tell her. Sorry. Cat's out of the bag.
Oh, yes. So Psalm 19:1. Yeah, Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God; the skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech; night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard." One can learn a lot about God from the general revelation of the universe at large, and although there are some theologians that would think otherwise, Karl Barth comes to mind. Most theologians have not bought into Karl Barth's position.
Which is?
His position is that you cannot learn anything about God from the general revelation. That is, it's entirely special revelation. And so he kind of cuts out. He has interesting ways of trying to deal with the passage like I just read here in Psalm 19 or the beginning of the book of Romans. And most theologians have not been convinced of his exegesis.
Well, you want to know,
his reason for it, though, was because of what...
a reaction to what was happening around him.
Yeah.
But I would say to him, if he were here, I totally disagree with that. And actually, I had a thought a couple weeks ago. I was talking to my friend, and it occurred to me, I really think that at the end of the whole culmination of all scientific discovery and knowledge and the culmination of it will be to be able to prove through science the existence of God.
Yeah. Well, Frank J. Tipler in 1994, since you bring this up, wrote a book called The Physics of Immortality. And what he argues is, I'll read from the back of the thing. It says, is there a God? Most modern scientists would answer that question with a simple no. They would say that there is no proof, no indication, no hint in nature that the universe is anything but a cold, unknowing place, that human beings are accidents of evolution, that when we die, our consciousness disappears into oblivion. But what if there was proof? With the publication of The Physics of Immortality, science has found God. And what Tipler argues for in his book is that he has a proof for the existence of God. And actually, the book sets up a series of testable hypotheses, which, if true, indicate that there is a God. And he essentially argues that God is, in essence, the God that we find in the Bible. So it's an intriguing book. His book, needless to say, has not been well received, at least in the scientific community, although there have been exceptions to that. Frank Dyson, who actually just got a Templeton Prize, I think that's his name, just a second, let me double check. Freeman Dyson, sorry. Freeman Dyson, who just got the Templeton Prize, likes Frank Tipler's science, but he wonders whether or not theologically there are problems with what he is arguing for.
Well, no doubt.
And then Wolfhart Pannenberg, who's a theologian, looks at the physics of this book and says he really likes the theology, but he wonders about the science.
Well, it's no doubt that anytime you're trying to give a big answer to, it's a complete answer to a big question, it's doubtful that a single person is going to have a complete answer that's all correct, and the point is to try and glean from it as much truth as you can, and not just throw out a theory or an idea just because there might be some, especially when it's dealing with such a broad.
Yeah, the proof of the existence of God has not been fully accepted and embraced by the scientific community, and of course. Although
I was talking to my friend who's going, he's biology or chemistry major at CSUN, and he said something to me the other day that was surprising. He's in a research group over the summer, and he made a statement that he's noticing more and more scientists that he meets, because he's actually meeting a lot now, through his research and everything. Most of them are Christians, and they and a good number of them became Christians after they got more involved in the sciences. So I think that the trend is moving away from the atheistic kind of center of science.
Yeah. A mistake that some Christians make is to assume that scientists are, as a group, atheists. There may be a slightly
Well, it's like assuming that teachers are all liberals.
Yeah, there is a slight...
We are not all.
There is a slightly higher percentage of atheists in the scientific community, doubtless. However,
there are a large portion of liberals being teachers.
Yes, but there are a sizable number of scientists who are Christian. Now, probably a vanishingly small percentage of those are fundamentalists, but
well, what he was noticing is that he notices the higher the level of education, the deeper into the sciences, in their particular specialty, the more number of Christians he finds. He said that in his freshman and sophomore years in science, there was predominantly atheists, and they kind of, looked down on anybody who had any kind of spiritual leanings at all. Yeah. But then as he gets up higher in his education, he's discovering that the numbers are changing to the other, and that surprisrised him.
Huh. That is interesting.
So, that's on CSUN.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, and there have been a number of books that have come out in the last few years. You've got God and the Astronomers came out in '78. You've got The Physics of Immortality that came out in '94. We've got this new book called Consilience, The Unity of Knowledge by Edward O. Wilson, which came out in '98.
Oh, I want to see that.
And there are each year numberless books being published now arguing for a rapprochement between, assuming that's the right pronunciation of the word, it's French and I'm never sure, unity between religion and science, that there does not have to be a conflict between the two. And of course the Templeton Prize and the Templeton Foundation also is working in the direction of that there does not need to be a conflict between the two branches of knowledge. And so this is a good development. There are those, of course, on the extremes in both areas that still lob bombs at one another, but you have a vast middle ground where people are not uncomfortable embracing both the principles of modern science along with a traditional view of God and the Bible. So, what would be... well, since the mapping of the genome, I'm playing with the microphone and Dandi's making fun of me.
Good back to normal.
Yes. Should find something else to occupy my hands with. I'll hold my Coke can.
Okay. Since the mapping of the genome.
Yeah, perhaps we can begin the discussion with that. What implications does that have, perhaps theologically?
Well, first of all, let's talk about it, because I know I've missed the reports on it.
Okay.
And I heard something vaguely about it, and I was interested in it, but it's like, because my schedule's been really weird this week, I've missed it.
Right.
And there may be other people that aren't watching or reading the news all the time that may not be as aware, so why don't you fill us in?
Okay. Over the last 10 years, there has been work on, my thing just went to screensaver. I didn't realize I'd set it up to do that. Oh well, it's Muppets in space. It startled me and distracted me. First time I've seen it. Stop looking at it. This is radio. People can't. Yes. Oh well, I'm just not all here today. Over the last 10 years, there have been both a international group funded by governments as well as private groups working at making a map of the human genome. That is, taking the chromosomes in human beings and mapping each gene on the chromosomes, so you know what the chemical combination of chemicals are on each strand of the DNA. Mm-hmm. The advantage of this, once it's all done, is then you can work at trying to figure out what each of these things is then doing. That is, what role does it play in producing the human being? Essentially, it's like we are taking a compiled program and decompiling it and looking at the source code. And so we now have the source code for making human beings. Now, it's still imperfectly understood, and it's kind of a rough outline of things.
But it's the
beginning.
It's the biggest step.
It is the biggest step, and in some respects, the most difficult step to accomplish. And already, even before they had finished it, there have been a number of discoveries on various genetic diseases and potential treatments for them as a consequence of this sort of research. And of course, a potential from this would be to figure out what causes aging, which is what you see in the Templeton newsletter, this
or mental illness,
all the different problems that we have as human beings. Now, I saw a rather lame...
obesity.
Yes. I saw a rather lame editorial cartoon in today's Antelope Valley Press, which I guess was somewhat critical of the whole project, but I thought the cartoon was stupid, where it says, where you have the one person talking about the benefits of the genetic research, and the other person saying, well, then that would mean no such and such. And so he'd say, okay, we can eliminate blindness. Well, then no Stevie Wonder. We can eliminate deafness. Well, then no Beethoven. And my thought to that is, I'm sure Stevie Wonder and Beethoven would have been much happier without deafness and blindness.
And they would have been equally as gifted. I mean,
right.
That's just...
You lose your ability to sing when you get your sight.
Yeah,
that's my problem. I can't sing because I can see.
Played before he lost his hearing.
Yes, their giftedness was not dependent upon their disability. Helen Keller would have been much happier as a human being had she not been blind and deaf. That is, this is not something.
And there will always be human character deficits and things like that. Even if physically we're able to be healthy and strong, there are always going to be challenges to overcome to make us stronger and better people.
Yes, the environment.
That's just silliness. I think it's just fear.
Yeah, we should not embrace bad things. That is, I do not go out of my way. I bet you if I had a challenge in my life like, getting run over by a car and having to pull back from that devastating
what a wonderful person
I would become. I think I'll step out in front of this Mack truck. I don't
People
think
go,
so.
what an idiot.
They'd probably say, well, there's only one way to go. If you're that much of an idiot, you got to go up. But
it is adversity. Adversity.
The bigger,
but we don't look for.
The bigger objection to that kind of thing is the overwhelming fear that I think it's. Okay, the one issue I want to talk about, because I think it's something that I hate it when people use this as a argument, and it's been used throughout history for every advancement in human development, is you're playing God.
Well, that's what we're supposed to do.
Right, exactly. But you know what?
The
church has been saying all along, oh, well, you're taking the place of God. You're deciding for God who should live and who shouldn't, who should do this and who shouldn't, all through history.
Mm-hmm.
We've been saying
it's
that.
God that allows us to make the discoveries anyway. So if
you know what?
We were encroaching on his territory, he'd stop us.
We were commanded to, in the, Genesis?
Chapter 1.
3? When God's commanding us what to do. Be fruitful.
Be fruitful.
Have sex, eat your vegetables, and subdue the earth.
Right.
The way you subdue something.
Have sex, eat vegetables, and mow the grass.
The way you subdue something is basically that. The idea of that is to rule over it, and the way you cannot rule over something, you cannot dominate it, you cannot control it unless you intimately understand it and can manipulate it.
Right.
And we're not even close to that yet. Mm-mm. I mean, we're fruitful and we eat our vegetables generally. And those of us who are in God's will eat our vegetables.
But we do not fully subdue the earth yet. That is tornadoes, hurricanes.
There's a ton of stuff we don't understand. There's a lot we don't understand yet.
Yes.
And this is all a part. Mm-hmm. All that science is doing right now is all a part of what God commanded us to do.
Exactly.
And it just frustrates me that people who think that they're,
it's
doing the will, that they think that they're really doing God's will, and they fight.
They fight something new. It's like if God had intended us to, and then you fill in the blank, then he would have given us one.
Well,
maybe God did intend us to. Wait a minute.
He gave us a brain.
Well, no. Let me go back farther. Maybe God did intend us to do all this, and sin kind of got in the way, and it's taken us a lot longer, maybe than he had hoped for it.
That would be my argument.
Kind of a silly analogy would be with this the fear of the future, and if we extend people's lives or whatever, would be like people now are dying of things that they never had the opportunity to die from before because they were dying of other stuff.
Yeah.
So for someone to say back in the 20s or 30s to say, to like have the knowledge that there's going to be all these other things to die from if you didn't die from polio or smallpox, whatever. No, I don't want a smallpox vaccine. I want to die of smallpox so I don't die of brain cancer.
That is what God intended.
That's right. God intended for us to die of smallpox, not die of brain cancer. So, so that's kind of a silly analogy, but it holds up.
It takes to an extreme the arguments that you'll run across.
Which is really what you need to do.
It's not the way we did it. And it's not the way we did it in the old days, and I like it. That grumpy old man that Dana Carvey does.
I kind of feel ornery today. I'm tempted to
perfect for a radio show, then.
That I wish, that I could go to all these people who are so afraid of it. Oh, they're going to be engineering people and and all this other, and what was that movie called? That they genetically engineered a bunch of little Hitlers. What was it called? Boys from Brazil.
Oh, boys, yeah.
Yeah. There people are afraid that stuff like that's going to happen.
Yeah, which is silly.
Some mad scientist is going to get the technology and they're going to duplicate a warrior race.
Pinky and the Brain really will conquer the world.
They're going to manufacture a warrior race of, these superhuman beings to take over or whatever. Or purposely mutate races so one race will really be superior and things like that. What I wish I could say to people like this that are they're so filled with, fear is that, what? Why don't you put your name in a database and you'll be refused any kind of treatment that has to do with this. And then there won't be any conflict.
You'll die and
what
go on your
really
merry
annoys
way.
me about people like fundamentalists who are anti-science, they take advantage of scientific advancements every single day of their life. That's what makes their lives comfortable, profitable, and everything. The exception are like Mennonites, that are living, with basically
not Mennonites,
Amish. That's right. They're living, totally
Mennonites
without technology.
Actually might be listening to us. Amish wouldn't be.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's my point.
She apologizes to the Mennonite community.
The point is that there's such an incredible inconsistency. They sit and out of one side of their face, they argue that it's against God's will and that we're playing God and we're messing with things away. And then they're sitting there talking on their cell phone. It's like be consistent. That just annoys me. I don't even want to talk to.
So either move along with the rest of us or go be Amish.
Yeah. I mean, be consistent. If you think science is such an evil thing, then you know what? Don't drink that soda out of that dispensing machine because you know what? Science made it possible to do that, to carbonate that drink.
Or like the NutraSweet that's in your diet soda, genetically engineered. Better not drink it.
That's something we can talk about. Genetic engineering when we come back. We need to take our 2-minute break.
Oh.
It's about 4:30 now.
Okay.
And we can talk about genetic engineering.
Beyond the Box is being brought to you by Court Hill School of Theology. Beyond the Box is the theological discussion forum of the faculty and students of Court Hill School of Theology. If you would be interested in enrolling, check out our website at theology.edu. We believe that a balanced theological education shouldn't cost you a fortune. We currently offer a Diploma of Biblical Studies, an Associate's degree of Theology, a Bachelor's degree of Theology, and a Master's of Divinity. In addition, we also offer continuing education unit seminars on a quarterly basis. To find out more, visit the website or send an email to info@theology.edu.
Warning: life support systems not active beyond this point.
If you have an idea for the show or there's something in theology that totally confounds you and you'd like to talk about it, why don't you send us an email at info@theology.edu. If you live in the Quartz Hill area and haven't yet found a church family, we'd like to invite you to come visit us. Quartz Hill Community Church. We are located at 51st Street West and Avenue K. We meet Sunday mornings for Sunday school at 10 o'clock, and our morning worship begins at 8:30 in the morning or at 11 o'clock. We also meet Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock. We'd love to have you come by.
Beyond the Box, www.whatson.net.
And we're back again after our break.
We were talking about the
Genetically engineered food.
Genetically engineered
things.
Well, what was our topic? I forgot how to say it.
Theological implications of modern science.
Yeah, what he said. Okay, if you want to participate in our lively discussion, we livened up before the first half hour was over.
Yeah.
You can reach us through AOL's Instant Messenger. The screen name is The Box Show. You can call us toll-free in the United States at 888-987-3100. Or if you're in the Antelope Valley, you can call us at 538-2030. Our ICQ number is 570-53108. And you can also email us at thebox@theology.edu, and we'll get the email right here in the studio. And so far, we haven't gotten one. I keep refreshing, and there's none there.
Nobody emailing or nobody?
No, nobody's really IMing either.
Oh, well.
Not yet.
Not
but
yet.
So,
also wanted to mention to
us.
those who are listening today, if you want to be added to our mailing list, you want to send us your email, and we'll let you know what's happening in the future shows and everything like that.
We'll add you to the mail list.
which we do need to make a little commercial here. That's starting this next Thursday. We're going to be on July 6th. We're going to be on Thursday nights. We will no longer be here on Saturdays.
Yes.
6 o'clock to 8 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, or daylight time now.
Daylight time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had the spring forward already.
Oh, okay.
You don't change the clocks in your house, so you wouldn't notice this.
I do change my watch.
Oh, okay, good.
I don't use the clocks in my house. I just use my watch.
Well, except the time I changed the clocks for you, you got all upset.
Yeah, because it
So
screwed me up. I didn't know if I was supposed to add or subtract.
Well, now they don't run because batteries died.
Okay, so it's
it's right twice a day,
moot.
and it's just 2 different times a day, half the year.
Okay, well, maybe in the future people can genetically engineer people to be better at doing their clocks.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to the topic.
Okay, let's talk about genetic engineering. People are very afraid of food that has been genetically engineered. You hear this food's been genetically engineered. Do 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 do.
Yes,
as you open the can, you can hear the Twilight Zone music.
Yeah, as if this is something new anyway.
Okay, well, let's first of all, because a lot of people are unaware of what genetically engineered anything means.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is happening to genetic engineering? It's not like they're mixing chemicals together and making an apple. You know what I mean?
No, they're not building it from the ground up,
Right.
although potentially that could happen in the future. But what they're doing now, you have a couple different things several different things are being done. One is simply speeding up the normal process of selective breeding. That is, selective breeding is something human beings have been doing with animals and plants from the get-go. It is corn, which at least here in the United States we eat a lot of, is a heavily engineered product, just from the standpoint that it comes from this grass-like maize that the Native Americans used, and the way it is now is a radically artificial thing. And in fact, it's so artificial that it really wouldn't be able to sustain itself without human intervention. And yet we think of that as being natural. The corn is not natural. It's because of human intervention that the thing exists. Cats and dogs are not particularly natural. They exist as we take care of them because they're artificially
Let me give you an
produced.
analogy of something that's considered would be also an idea of genetically engineered something.
Mules?
No. A friend of mine, he likes to raise iris plants, the flowers, and he did a class on how to cross-pollinate and create your own basically variety of iris. And he showed how to do it. And basically what you're doing is you're taking the place of the little bee, and you are choosing what flowers you want to pollinate with what other flowers so that you can create a whole new flower. And that's something that our agricultural community has been doing all along.
Yes.
And
we
they're
started
basically
domesticating plants and animals. We've been doing that.
Genetic engineering is just kind of a more scientific name for it, but they're able to do things now on a more microscopic level.
Right.
Like for
They can
instance,
target
right. Like
exactly
for instance,
what you want.
there might be a variety of orange that does particularly well in a certain area of the country, but it has some flaw in it that makes it not be able to stay fresh for as long, makes it decay faster or something like that. And so genetic engineering would take that orange that is favorable for that environment, and they would genetically remove that part of the thing in the orange that makes it decay quicker, so that it has a longer life. And it's not making that orange not an orange. Right. It's not making it into, it's not turning it all of a sudden into this chemical wasteland. But anti-genetic engineering people, I went to a few sites of people who are anti-genetic engineering, and they give a very, in Logic you gave us what it was called, but the actual formal name for what they were doing. But they were basically doing, it's kind of like the straw man idea. They're saying this is what genetic engineering is, and then they tear it apart, but they were like really kind of not complete. Yeah. And even their argument for tearing it down just didn't seem very strong. It's like, well, so it's not going to hurt you. I mean,
and see, there's absolutely no evidence of it causing anybody any problems. And yet they're saying, well, it might. Well, there's lots of things that might happen to you. Well, you might get hit by that Mack truck.
But like always, like throughout all of history, when we have new things happen, like for instance,
more traditional.
No, but okay. First of all, there's ethical issues involved in genetic engineering, as far as how it relates to the human being, right? And like parents deciding, choosing what kind of personality and looks and disposition and everything they want their child to have. Right. That is an area where still people are saying, "Well, you're playing God."
So.
And I mean, no, seriously, there's people
are
who,
afraid of that.
But I don't understand why that's a problem.
Because for whatever it goes back, it's what I call the Frankenstein complex. That is, the novel Frankenstein deals with the idea that there are just certain things that human beings shouldn't fiddle with. And if we fiddle in areas that God didn't intend us to fiddle with, it's going to come back and bite us. And so we just need to stay out of these places. Those are no-no places, and we'll get our hands slapped if we go there. And that's what happened to poor Dr. Frankenstein. He fiddled with stuff he shouldn't have fiddled with, and so he and his monster die. And so you have this desperate fear on the part of a lot of people, that somehow, if we fiddle in certain areas, that it's going to destroy us. And so they're just afraid, is what it comes down to. It's fear. And that's why it's difficult to deal with people that are afraid, is because fear is to some extent often irrational. Now, one aspect of genetic engineering that probably scares these people particularly is what's called transgenetic research, where you take genes from another species and implant them into something radically different. For instance, a good example of this, and this will end up being a very valuable resource, but this is the type of thing that scares people. It's called biosteel. And what they do is they take the gene that allows spiders to create silk, their silk, and they implant that into goats.
Oh, yeah, those goats that worth millions of dollars ago. What did they eat?
Goat silk?
Well, what it does is their milk then produces that same substance. And then you can take and,
the milk is kind of stringy.
It's a lot more
quantity.
It's a higher quantity of the silk. And see, the spider's silk is extremely strong, and so they can use this stuff then to produce I mean, it's a lot stronger than steel. And that's why it's called biosteel.
They can use it in medicine, I imagine.
Well, medicine, they can use it for making, say, bulletproof vests. They can use it to make aircraft hulls. I mean, it's an extremely useful substance. And getting goats to produce essentially spider silk is a useful thing.
Milking that goat? That is odd. It would be a hard thing to get used to.
Well, it looks just like normal milk. It's just that
Yeah, it's liquid.
It's liquid. It's just that you suck the moisture out, and you got this stuff then that's essentially spider silk that you can then use for what you'd use spider silk for. Except you have a much
what do you
larger
have in the glass?
quantity.
Oh, I have my bulletproof vest in this glass.
Yeah, obviously, this would not be something you necessarily drink, but it's that type of thing that, for whatever reason, really scares people. But yet, the benefits.
Well,
from
I think they're afraid that, like I said, that some evil power, some evil entity is going to get a hold of this technology and going to be able to create mutant.
That's an unfortunate byproduct of like 50s movies and stuff.
No, but you know what?
And potentially, people can do bad things. Yeah. But what you do is you prohibit people doing bad things, not the underlying
That's
technology.
The point I was trying to get to, is that when we have new areas that create new ethical and criminal problems,
right,
then you create a system to work within that framework. Hopefully not as restrictive as some of our other systems, but it's not something that we can't deal with.
Yeah, that is, nuclear energy is an area where you have people freaking out over, just like they do with genetic engineering. And it's the same type of issue. That is, people see the mushroom cloud whenever they hear nuclear. And yet, if they have cancer, they're quite happy to go to the doctor and get the radiation treatments or whatever they might need. Or if they have some other problem, they get the what's that tube that you go through that they make an image?
CAT scan?
Well, CAT scans. MRIs. All these things are derived from the nuclear technology.
Right. That's my other argument earlier, where if these people are making these arguments, let's not force, but because I don't believe in that, but it would be really nice if they would be consistent and not take advantage of any of the.
So when they get sick, you can't have a MRI or
you
CT
can't
scan.
make use of any of the nuclear.
You can't even have dental X-rays.
Yeah,
So
actually, they should
nuclear.
probably hide from the sun, since that's actually a fusion generator. Nuclear
But see, that's organic.
But it's natural.
It's natural.
It's natural.
Yeah.
But see, the bottom line to this, and this is the point I wanted to get to, is everything is natural.
Yeah,
it's just all we are doing is reorganizing what we find in nature. We are not God. We cannot create it out of nothing yet.
Not yet. Which brings up an interesting joke which will illustrate this. It is, the scientists come to God and say, God, we really don't need you anymore. We can make life on our own. We can manipulate matter. We can do anything at all you want that you can do. We don't need you anymore. And God says, let's have a contest. You and I create a human being from scratch. And scientists say, okay, that sounds good. And if you're able to do that, then, I'll go away. I won't bother you anymore. So the scientists say, fine, great. And so they start to reach down to grab some dirt to start the process of turning it into a human being. God says, wait a minute, get your own dirt. See, that's the problem. You can't start from nothing.
We are simply reorganizing what God has put here, and that is part of
nature.
No, that is part of subduing the earth.
Yeah.
Is what he commanded us to do.
Yeah, but everything is ultimately natural. That is, one of the silliest things is you'll look at products, they'll say, artificial ingredients. And that's kind of a artificial labeling system. Because if you were to analyze the quote-unquote natural product, the chemical elements that make it up, and analyze the so-called artificial product and the chemical elements that make it up, you'd find they're exactly the same. The only difference between strawberry flavoring that's artificial and strawberry flavoring that comes from a strawberry is where it came from. But the chemical is exactly the same.
Well, actually, if you take an actual strawberry and try to add that flavor to a lot of things, it won't come out tasting like strawberry. That's why you need the engineered stuff so that so it will actually taste. If you got a strawberry milkshake that tasted like, I don't know, whatever it would taste like, without the goop stuff they put in, with like just strawberry. Actually, I did when I was in Las Vegas. I had a sip of one of the girls' strawberry shakes that was made with actual strawberries. And it tasted different from, it's really sour. You don't get that nice strawberry flavor from it. And so there's a reason why we came
strawberry
up.
Flavor.
There's a reason why we came up with this stuff. We didn't just say, wow, strawberries are inherently evil. Let's make a chemical that tastes like strawberries that won't be evil. It's...
Okay, one of the arguments against the whole things about it's not organic and stuff. There's actually, to me, some validity in this argument that says that the human body was designed a certain way, and just like a car is designed to take gasoline, to be able to get it to run at its optimum, you need to put in the fuel that it's designed to use.
Right.
And there are things like that new fat blocker stuff. It's a chemical that they put in high-fat foods to make you not be able to digest it, and it just goes out.
Right.
Those kind of things. They're not chemicals. They're not taking natural occurring foods that that just we have already that our bodies are used to using. They're not taking that and just duplicating it chemically and it being the same thing. They're actually taking things that we never used and putting them in our bodies, and those are causing sicknesses and illnesses, and our bodies aren't able to deal with those. And that part of the argument I agree with, that there are things like we generally, it's not for us to eat steel rods. Our body is not real good at processing that. So I think in that respect, I agree with it, that if it's not something that our bodies are designed to assimilate, then it's going to have some negative consequences.
Well, potentially, but then our bodies aren't designed to assimilate certain medications that we take for different illnesses either.
And they have bad side effects.
They can have bad side effects, but that can be better than dying.
Well, no, but that's not my point. My point is that I want to make a delineation between. I want to make a delineation between genetically engineering food that they're not adding anything into it that our bodies don't normally process and are not used to receiving, as opposed to some chemicals and things that are actually poisons to our body that putting in for possible benefits like not being able to absorb fat. We have to weigh the risks in that sort of a situation. Right. But I mean, that's the part of the argument that I do agree with. That we want to make sure that with our food it's still nutritious and safe. But just taking out the ingredient, the part of the orange that makes it rot faster is not going to harm. Right. The other thing to keep in mind, too, and this, I think, is an interesting indication of the problem with ignoring modern science, is if herbs and vitamins and all these sorts of things were as beneficial as some of the proponents of them indicate, then why is it that our ancestors, who that's all they had, how come they died so young? That is, human beings are living longer today than they have ever lived in recorded history. I also want to bring up another point about that. My friend that's doing this research, his group is working on duplicating a chemical that is naturally occurring in the single flower that's grown in Japan. And what this flower is used for is or this chemical, what they've discovered, the research that's already been accomplished at this point, has discovered that this particular component of the flour, that when given in appropriate dosages and distillations and all that, can actually search out in the human brain sick cells. And affect it somehow. I wasn't really sure if it just finds them, locates them, or if it actually inhibits their growth. But what he told me was that this flour is like, you get like tons of this flour to be able to get enough for even one dose.
So it'd be nice if you.
So what they're trying to genetically engineer this flour to not the whole flour. They just need to figure out how to make this one component so that they can mass produce it. So they can have people that have like Parkinson's disease and all these like Alzheimer's and things like that.
Right.
This is going to be huge. This is going to like totally transform, brain chemistry basically.
Right.
And this is a really good thing. That's not something to be afraid of.
No, but people will be.
Especially if you have a parent that has Alzheimer's disease. You're going to really be happy if they
generally,
do
the way
this.
you do it, this is again transgenetic research. What you do is you take that part of the gene that produces that and you'd insert it in some innocuous bacteria, and then that bacteria would then produce this stuff. That's one of the ways they produce artificial insulin, is to put the thing that makes insulin into a particular kind of bacteria that then just pumps out this stuff in huge amounts.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a good thing.
I know they do that with the pig brain cells for Parkinson's disease, and it's having a lot of positive effects.
This is kind of a minor bunny trail, but it does...
the whole thing's kind of a bunny trail.
It does kind of come in with what you guys were talking about the... about using parts of flowers or whatever, the part that actually works, making it into something.
Right.
And the whole organic environmentalist thing going on. It was interesting. There's a book called The Great Kapok Tree, which is an absolutely beautiful book, and it's about this tree in the rainforest. And these two men come. It's in our reading series that our district uses. And I teach it in my class, but I was substituting for another teacher who was out ill while I was off track. And so I was reading that story with her class. And it was interesting when the two men came in, and before we found out anything about the tree, before we found out anything that was happening, and the one man points to the tree and the other man takes out his axe and tries to start cutting it down, the children automatically assume that he was a bad man. Well, we get through the whole story, and the thrust of the story is it's all the animals. He falls asleep because this tree is really hard to chop down, and because the forest is so warm and everything, he falls asleep, and the animals come down and talk to him while he's asleep, giving him reasons why he shouldn't cut down their tree. And, and every animal has its reasons, and they're good reasons and everything. And then at the end, he just takes his axe and he walks away because he realizes that the tree is so beneficial. But then I talked to the kids about why they assumed he was a bad man. They said, well, he's going to cut down a tree in the rainforest. I said, but was he just cutting it down for fun? Was he cutting it down so that he
could build a house for his family?
Right. But then I said, what if that tree was the only kind of tree that they could get a certain medicine from that could cure a disease that was like killing people? And then the kids go, well, that wouldn't be so bad. And I go, see? I said, just because he came to chop down the tree does not make him a bad man.
Genetic engineering makes it possible that we don't need to rape the environment for these resources when we create them artificially in a lab.
Exactly. That's, again, part of the benefit of it.
But it's interesting that that's the bend right now, that anything...
Well, that's because of Ferngully.
Hate that movie. Hate it.
The movie didn't do that well, though.
No, but the movie did indoctrinate kids into thinking that way. I had to talk to my kids about it, too.
They get a lot of serious amounts of that information.
Or whatever you call it.
So
propaganda.
Approach.
And I always warn my students against it. It's like it's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on the reasoning behind it.
Like hunting animals.
Right.
This is a big issue. I have a really close friend who is so anti-hunting, and I have another really close friend who is like a major hunter. And it's really funny listening. I mean, they don't talk to each other, but I talk to them about it. And no, I don't think I'll get them together. No, but I'm sure. But it's like they have such different views on the whole thing, and they both seem very reasonable. But
thesis, antithesis.
Yeah.
See,
And I'm kind of in
the
between
whole
there.
movement is a reaction against complete lack of concern for
environment.
For the environment.
Or it wasn't even lack of concern.
Eventually you'll end up with the more balanced.
It was that the world changed very quickly and very dramatically with industrialization.
Right.
And it just took us a little while to figure out how to create that balance.
You know, in the 70s,
it's actually a
though...
self-correcting problem. Eventually we get past the need for making
it's self-correcting through human agents, and the people, like, for instance, my sister was very anti. She did the whole boycotting McDonald's because they use styrofoam containers, and she was like very on us if we ate at McDonald's. But you know what? McDonald's doesn't use styrofoam containers anymore for that reason. They use and most companies they have switched to recyclable materials and stuff, and they're doing their part. But if it wasn't for the activists doing that and the people that were a bit extreme that we kind of roll our eyes at and stuff, if they hadn't done what they did, then the change wouldn't have occurred. So I mean, that isn't my issue that I'm going to get all hot and bothered about, but I'm glad somebody is. And I'm not going to look. It kind of annoyed me that she made me feel guilty the whole time I was eating my Big Mac. I said, look, I'll make a necklace out of the material, okay? Out of the box, I'll reuse it.
Well, people still don't want to use styrofoam cups, but they don't realize that they're not made with the chemicals that were supposedly harming the environment. Now, anyway, when
they melt if you put water in.
When you use, well, you know what I like?
Spun silk cups. That would be cool.
Yeah, good.
Good for backpacking, and they'd be really light.
BioSteel cups.
You know what I like are the biodegradable plastic grocery bags, because they were flying all over everywhere, and they're like, oh, we've got to make these more biodegradable. They biodegrade in your car. When you pick up your grocery bag, all the groceries fall out the bottom. They need to make them just a tad stronger.
Yeah, the law of unintended consequences.
Yes.
Sometimes plays a role.
No, but the point being is that with all our scientific advancements, there's a lot of benefits that come from it. There are adjustments that we're going to have to make. There's going to be choices we're going to have to make, decisions about ethics and how far we'll let something go, and also what the consequences are. Because really, anytime you enter a new field of discovery, you don't really know how it's going to impact things.
Right.
For instance, computers. It has totally transformed our economics in this country. That is like computers just in the last 20 years have taken over.
Right.
And this is a really good thing. E-commerce is becoming huge.
Yes. And thanks to computers, here we are.
But just a few, even 20 years ago, there were people who were afraid of them, that it was going to do all these bad things. And what it has done. No, in fact,
actually the opposite.
It's the opposite. It has given people freedom from the government. Basically, you have freedom to talk to people. I have talked to people in China, in Muslim countries and stuff. I've talked to Muslims who would probably get killed if they talked to me on the street where they live, and openly talking to me about Christianity, asking questions, and basically they have all these myths and created about Americans and about Christianity, and just talking to me for a couple hours, I got to straighten out some of that thinking, to the fact where I need to rethink this whole Christianity thing, because it's not what I was taught it was, and that would have never been possible without the internet and without computers. And when bad things happen, we take measures to prevent that from happening again.
Right.
It's great. It creates more freedom.
The benefits far outweigh the potential bad things. And that's something to always keep in mind with the new technology. That is, with all the technology that's come along in the last several years, the benefits have, I would argue, far outweighed any of the downsides of it. That is, certainly nuclear energy can be used to blow up cities, but it's only been used to blow up 2 cities. And we've had the technology now for 55 years. And it's only been used in warfare twice.
And that really ended the war.
And that ended the war, and
probably saved a lot of lives.
And actually, its use at that point probably served as inoculation against using it again, because it was such a frightening thing. Yeah. But the benefits of nuclear technology have far outweighed the downsides from it. Well,
we need to go to the 2-minute. When we come back, I want to talk about stem cells and also about embryonic tissue. That's nice and controversial.
Okay, cool.
Beyond the Box is being brought to you by Quartz Hill School of Theology. Beyond the Box is the theological discussion forum of the faculty and students of Quartz Hill School of Theology. If you would be interested in enrolling, check out our website at theology.edu. We believe that a balanced theological education shouldn't cost you a fortune. We currently offer a Diploma of Biblical Studies, an Associate's degree of Theology, a Bachelor's degree of Theology, and a Master's of Divinity. In addition, we also offer continuing education unit seminars on a quarterly basis. To find out more, visit the website or send an email to info@theology.edu.
Warning: life support systems not active beyond this point.
If you live in the Quartz Hill area and haven't yet found a church family, we'd like to invite you to come visit us. Quartz Hill Community Church. We are located at 51st Street West and Avenue K. We meet Sunday mornings for Sunday school at 10 o'clock, and our morning worship begins at 8:30 in the morning or at 11 o'clock. We also meet Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock. We'd love to have you come by.
Hello everyone, my name is Alyssa. I want to talk to you about Beyond the Box. I'm 6 years old, and even I understand it sometimes, so I think you should listen. Goodbye and God bless.
If you have an idea for a show, some topic that you'd like us to discuss, just give us an email at info@theology.edu, and if we like your idea, maybe we'll use it.
Beyond the Box, www.whatson.net.
And we are back again.
Yep. We are talking about the theological implications of modern science. Let's say that together. If you want to participate in the discussion, we are at AOL's Instant Messenger. The screen name is The Box Show, and on ICQ we are at 570-53108. Our toll-free number in the United States is 888-987-3100. The local number is 538-2030, and you can email us at thebox@theology.edu. And if you missed any of that, you can find us at www.theology.edu. Just click on the little blue word webcast, and it's all there. And also, we are moving to Thursday nights from 6 to 8 Pacific time.
Starting this Thursday.
Starting this next Thursday. We figure Fraser can change his time slot. We can change ours.
Right.
Moves us into a nicer neighborhood.
So you wanted to talk about the use of stem cells
and also
cells.
Embryonic tissue is much more controversial than stem cells. I think stem cells, it's mostly just people aren't aware of what it is, and it's like, you know, like harvesting is not even an issue where stem cells are concerned. That's where they take the after a baby's born, when they cut the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord. Well, it's not mentioned in the Bible, so it's the unbiblical cord. I cannot believe I said that. The umbilical cord. I usually pronounce things quite well. But anyway, and then what they do is they extract some blood cells from that and they freeze it, and they can use it now for instead of bone marrow transplants for people with leukemia, and there's some other uses for it, and they believe that there'll be a lot more uses for it. And the nice thing about it is, one, you don't have to go through the very painful process of donating marrow if you're somebody's match. Also, it's easier to match somebody with stem cells, and there's less chance of rejection. So, and pretty much all it requires is that when you register at the hospital when you're pregnant, you just sign the paperwork saying that you're willing to have this done. Doesn't hurt the baby, doesn't hurt. They're doing it to the placenta. You don't even want to look at it. It's nasty looking. I've seen one or two or three. But anyway, and they're just throwing that away anyway. But the thing that's really controversial is embryonic tissue, and from babies that were miscarried or even from aborted fetuses. Right. They want to use tissue from them to grow organs and things like that.
For research purposes.
Right. One of the things...
Like with the, brain cells or whatever, they can use those with... Is it Parkinson's disease?
Yeah.
And other neurological...
illnesses.
A point they were making... I'm not sure if it was Michael J. Fox talking about or somebody quoting him or anyway, but it was somebody that knew what they were talking about, was saying that the amount of embryonic tissue they need for the research is not a lot. And the amount that they want Congress to make a law that they can do this. It's for a limited period of time. It's a limited amount of embryonic tissue, and it's a limited scope under which they can get it. They can't pay women to go out and get pregnant and have abortions so that they can harvest these. These are babies that were going to be aborted anyway, babies that died anyway, whatever. Right. And then they're going to get the tissue from those babies. It's for a limited period of time because I think they realize the real serious, dangerous potential for it.
See, now, having been in a situation of having lost a baby pre-birth, that... If a doctor would have come up to us knowing that the baby was still inside and before I had given birth, would have said, want you to consider the possibility of donating her tissue to research for this particular, cause or whatever. I think that would have been a comforting thing to me to know that something good could come out of it. I think at minimum they should ask women who are facing a spontaneous abortion or miscarriage that's an option that they could participate in at least.
Right. It's just like donating organs, I would say. That is, we, at least in the United States, don't have trouble with the idea of when someone dies, their organs being harvested for use.
But I remember when organ donation... But I remember when organ donation was in its infancy. I was still rather young, but I remember this same thing going on. People saying, well... how are they going to be sure that you're dead? Because at the time, not a lot was understood about brain death. I think people understand a lot more about brain death, and that once your brain is dead, you're gone. Whether your heart keeps beating or not, you're a goner. And at the time, it was like, well, doctors will just, we have a heart. This person's almost dead. Let's just take their heart, finish the process, and we've got this heart over here.
Or even when I was in high school, and we were talking, we got a discussion. I don't even remember if a teacher was present. Considering the way the discussion went, I doubt there was a teacher present. But we were talking about whether or not we were going to put the dot on our driver's license or not. And all of it, the organ donor dot.
California.
And,
and in Arizona.
Right. Is it a little dot in Arizona, too?
But anyway, we were talking about that. We all decided, no way, because if we get in a car accident and we're, mostly, really mangled or whatever,
mostly
they have a dot. Let's just use their body parts. Let's not put them back together. But that isn't totally that in the medical field, that's appalling to think that they would do that. They won't do that.
Out of that discussion came the protocols for making sure that someone is dead. It's not just a doctor going, they're mostly dead. Let's take their brain.
No, actually, they have to have family consent.
Yeah. But if you've signed
consent,
consent,
I think where I would go with this whole embryo tissue issue is I would hate to have
the tissue issue.
The tissue issue. I would hate to have that in the hands of the doctors or the government. To be honest with you, I think that it should be a program that makes it available to parents, like a regular organ donation, where the parent can decide can they be used that way, because there are people who have religious beliefs that they're incompatible with that idea.
Right.
That after for them to rest in peace, to not have,
they have to be all in one piece,
or not being disturbed after they're dead.
Rest in PIECE.
Like leave them alone.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see government I wouldn't like to see the government be in charge of controlling that, or would I like, as far as saying,
but they do
the
such a good job of controlling the mail service.
Well, I think
of everything, but also doctors too, because that puts them in a position of making choices and decisions that aren't really within their realm. But I think it's an
if they
issue
have
that
the protocols like they do for,
but I still think it
for
should
organ
be the choice of the
donation
I think it
and
should
all
be.
that.
Organ
Right.
donation is done by
I think that if
family.
they deal with it that way, that it's the parent's choice, then. That could actually bring a lot of comfort to people who, in a place of tragedy, to bring amount of comfort that their baby's life was not for nothing.
I think that what keeps ringing in my head is, remember when people used to sell plasma when they were really they used to sell their blood when they were really poor, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now they don't
Like
do
they
that
do with
anymore.
hair.
But the idea, I think what people fear is that women who need the money and don't want the child they're going to have will abort it for the money, or will have it to abort it for the money for fetal tissue. But I think that,
well, for one thing, I think this is a short-term problem. This gets into a secondary issue, which is the issue of cloning. That is, what cloning technology will do, and this seems to be missed by a lot of people that are afraid of clones because they think of the movie Boys in Brazil, is that what cloning will allow is the potential for growing organs. That is, they'll be able to take some of your tissue and make it, and thanks to genetic engineering and understanding how genes work, you can tell the cell, okay, cell, I want you now to become a heart cell and to make a heart. And so they'll take some of your blood or whatever and make it grow into a heart, which will then be completely compatible with your body. No more rejection, no more waiting around forever to get a compatible organ. You'll just manufacture them when you need them.
That's
which
a
is
wonderful
a nice
thing.
That's what cloning will do eventually. So, and that will solve a lot of problems. That is, the more thoroughly we understand how we work, the underlying programming, the closer we get to that kind of a scenario where if something's not functioning, then we can just grow a new one for you from scratch.
And be able to, if your scratch is deficient in some way, be able to add or subtract from that to make
so that it comes out right. That is, if you congenitally have a bad heart, that is, if your body naturally produces a heart that doesn't function properly, well, we'll just fix the genes so that it will work
which would eliminate a lot of surgeries for babies that are born with defective hearts. They end up having 5, 6, 7 surgeries. They can grow them one.
This whole thing is going to totally transform the medical profession.
Exactly.
It's going to... Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting because the implications. Because we're supposed to be talking about theological implications, but it ends up being more of an ethics issue.
Yeah,
but that movie, what was that movie? Oh, now it's like with Uma Thurman.
Gattaca.
Gattaca kind of deals with this.
Yeah.
The potential is that it's going to totally transform not only the medical community, but insurance will be a totally different thing.
I think the fear in Gattaca is unfounded because if we have that kind of genetic understanding, if you do have a genetic problem, then we'll just fix it.
Right. Yeah, their premise is that you can only be genetically engineered before you're born. After that, they don't know how to deal with you.
Which is an unlikely scenario. But, that is.
No, but the idea being that it's going to change. It will change the world that we live in, and it's going to make it better.
Good and bad things. Potentially bad things can come from it, but you simply legislate or prohibit. That's
why you have courts and
what I think is exciting about it is because one of my greater interest is in the human mind and how it works, and And the major impact it's going to finally probably have on mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And all the problems that we have, with, it was your book, actually. I was trying to think of what book was it that I read that criminals don't go to jail. They just go for rehabilitation. They go in to get some genetic re-engineering so that they're not criminals anymore.
Right.
I mean, that is actually, it's probably
potential.
Quite in the future, but maybe
See, judges
not as far.
say, you are now sentenced to having your third chromosome on the left changed out and made better.
Now, this brings up an interesting question ethically, and you have some Christians that are very much in favor of stiffer penalties and death penalty and all that. Well, what if you could take a person that has committed a crime and fix them so they don't do it anymore? Does that mean that we still need to have?
Oh, this is a big. We can answer that. We can. So let's do that first because I'm going to take us off on something totally wild.
Okay.
But
that isn't the point of...
No, they want them to be punished.
Yeah, but see, the point biblically, I would argue, is restoration. That is fixing the problem. That is the reason that you have these different penalties is they're at a technological level where if you have someone do this thing or that thing or the other thing, you have very few options
without
to keep the tribe working properly.
Without the criminal penalty, say that you go in, you get medically altered so that you're no longer this deficient person.
Right.
You still have the civil courts to retribution. So
right.
And you have to live with the knowledge that you did what you did.
Right.
Yeah, in a sane mind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go a little step further than that.
Okay.
Is it possible? Okay. This is assuming the presupposition that our sin is the sin.
Well, the Traducian theory in theology is it's passed on from our parents. So we are getting
it's a genetic thing. That sin is a genetic thing. Can we genetically engineer sin out of us?
It's an interesting question.
And if we can, does that make Christ's death no longer valid?
No longer necessary.
No longer necessary.
He did that chuckle. You got him to do that chuckle.
And that's your goal in life, isn't it?
Well, it means you don't really know the answer.
That's right.
Or it's something you hadn't thought of before.
No, I hadn't really thought about it. I had thought about the implications of immortality, and I don't see that as being a problem. That is, if we manage to prevent physical death, I don't see that that's a bad thing. You'll have some Christians that will be opposed to it for religious reasons, thinking, well, God intended us to die. Again. And so we've got to die. The atonement has already been paid for. Actually, the death of Christ would not be without value or without validity, because everyone prior to being genetically without sin would be covered by that.
We can step back 2 weeks and answer this question, because sin is not the acts that you do, the murder or the adultery or whatever.
Those are symptoms.
Sin is not loving God, not loving others, and I don't think that you will be able to genetically engineer out of people or genetically engineer love into them.
No, you can't genetically engineer love necessarily, but what we're talking about is that
the thing
that exists within us that Paul talks about.
Right.
That makes us war with our body. Basically to genetically engineer us not to want to
do those actions.
Right.
To take out what was put in.
Yeah, that is sin. Yeah, that is whatever it is that Adam and Eve did, the effect that had on them physically.
See, generally, most people talk about sin as though it's a philosophical or just like a spiritual, mystical kind of happening. But from what we can tell, it's an actual physical...
Yeah,
there's a physical trigger or something inside of us. And if that physical trigger, if that thing is removed, where do we stand in our relationship with God?
Yeah. That is, would we then create people that are like Adam then?
I would argue that they would be... back to where God wanted them to be, except that you still have to have that relationship. You have to repair that relationship somehow.
Right.
Now, with that, because sin isn't an issue, because of what Christ did, whether or not we have that in us anymore, whether or not we ever engineer it out, and we have the potential to, or not. The Christ's death
sin issue.
took care of sin. Is no longer an issue anyway, so that isn't even the thing. The
point is the relationship.
The relationship, and also as on a more horizontal level, getting the human race back to where God created us and what God intended for us to be. And a lot of people think that God is just going to wave his magic wand at some point in time and transform everybody. And that's pretty much what most theology teaches. But there is also the possibility that God's going to let us do it through our natural course of events. And because he doesn't, he's not in a big hurry.
This is true. He's very patient.
And there is the possibility that humanity over time will be able to undo all the damage.
Right.
But I want to underline that by saying that our presupposition here in saying all of this is always a recognition that no knowledge comes without all knowledge comes through the hand of God.
Right.
Whether you have a relationship with God or not, that all new discoveries and understanding is that enlightenment comes through God, that we're not going to do this unless, that if God doesn't want it to happen, he will stop it. And fling us back to the story of the Tower of Babel.
Right.
God himself saying that, if basically together,
if they imagine to do this,
they imagine to do anything.
Nothing they imagine to do will be impossible for them.
Right. And the only thing that will stop us as a human race, and I'm not talking about this generation or one person, but all of the human race over all of history, because we all build on what came before. Nothing is impossible. God said nothing is impossible for us to do. And and the only thing that will stop us is God himself. And so we're pretty safe to go and try and, conquer new worlds and do whatever it is, because we're rest assured that if we go too far, God is going to slow us down.
Right. He's done it before. He can do it again.
And he might have a time plan where he needed to slow us down until Christ came, because he needed to come at a certain time where it's not too technologically advanced and everything.
Yeah, well,
and then after that point, boom, we can really go, like
whatever we want.
Racers, to try and get to the end.
Yeah.
I think it's an exciting thing. And it frustrates me that so many Christians can't look at it that way.
Yeah. Well, the curses that you have in Genesis chapter 3, which follow the poor choice that Adam and Eve made, and it says that, verse 16, the woman, he said, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband. He will rule over you. To Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. My point in reading that is that we are tasked with resisting the curse. That is, by definition, curse is a bad thing. And humanity, since this point, has attempted to undo the curse. For instance, you had resistance early on to anesthetics because, then the woman won't have pain in childbirth. And God said the woman has to have pain in childbirth. Well, it said that pain in childbirth is what's going to happen now. It doesn't mean that it has to be that way forever and all eternity.
Right. And my favorite thing is the people, the men and women, I guess, there's a whole flock of them out there who say the man has to be in charge and you have to be in submission, like that. The husband will rule over you. That is part of the curse. And if it's not
the ideal.
Again, I'd like to be able to put that man on the spot, unless he's roofing in hot weather all day long, then come home and say that. But if you're in a cushy office in an air-conditioned building, baby, you are denying the curse, and you are not in God's will. I mean, according to your standard, because you are not working by the sweat of your brow.
Yes, and like I said, we don't go walking in front of Mack trucks on purpose. That is, we try to avoid this last part about turning back into dust again as long as we possibly can. And we view that as a good thing to try to resist ending up dead.
Right.
We don't embrace death. We run from it as fast as we can. We resist the curses, and this is, I think, part of what is to be expected of us as human beings. And so if we manage to, we've already overcome the pain in childbirth. That is, women do not ever have to experience pain in childbirth.
That's not true.
Well, in some cases...
No, you still have, I don't know.
We give you drugs.
They gave me drugs, and I still felt it. So.
Well, they didn't give you enough.
But
no, it's more complicated than that. But the thing is, you don't always have to. There are options, and you don't have to be in the misery that
you
they are.
want to do natural childbirth, drug-free. It's there's no prize. The prize is the same at the end.
Right.
You have a baby. Hopefully it's healthy, alive, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a baby at the end.
You don't get
that's your prize.
Brownie points
you don't.
for the
that's
amount
right.
of pain you have.
Actually,
you don't get a tiara.
We're really off track here, but I just want to say that those of you who can go through labor and not have any kind of anesthetic or anything like that, I think it's just stupid, because you're looking at a year of not being able to even sleep through the night. Why wear yourself out more? Why don't you just rest a little bit more so you have more energy? I'm telling you, going through labor wears you out, even if you are medicated.
Yeah. There's a reason why they call it labor.
And as Christians, we should probably get rid of all our air conditioning, because we're supposed to sweat.
Nope.
Only when you work.
Oh.
That's only for the men. So.
And only the men are supposed to sweat.
Ah. Okay.
Women glow.
Yeah. Well, it's only the men that are supposed to die.
Cool.
If you look at it the way it's set up, it says, and to Adam he said, curse is ground. By the sweat of your brow you'll eat until you return to the ground. And he's talking to Adam. So why is it that women die too?
He's talking about that you're going to have to work until you die.
Ah. Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
Well, see, now
the curses should be overcome, and so I see no reason why. Plus, in Christ, the curse has been done away with.
Right. Exactly.
So there's no reason to maintain these things anyway. We should try to overcome them.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because in religious circles, you have a tendency to I don't know, break out of your children and each other, dream the imagination and dream kind of characteristic in human nature. It's not acceptable in most religious circles to be different and to be imaginative and to think outside the box. Those things, those kind of behaviors aren't rewarded in our children generally, or among each other.
Well, you have some Christians that are vehemently opposed to imagination. That is, they're opposed to any kind of fantasy at all.
That's the point I'm making, and what their goal is generally, they won't state this, but this is
some
actually
do.
In practice what they try and do. Let me finish the thought.
Okay, sorry.
Is that by the way they socialize and how they treat each other, they are trying to create this totally homogenous society where one person doesn't look a whole lot different than another person. They think alike, they dress alike, they eat alike, they are entertained
identical
alike.
cousin.
Right. Okay. And one of the biggest, the saddest things about that is that going back to what God said, is anything that they imagine to do it won't be impossible for them. They can do it. Our first step in advancing is to be able to dream that something can happen.
Yes.
And that's why science fiction and stuff is so great, because just like 50 years ago, the science fiction that was so far-fetched is happening. Not only is it happening, but it's happening to, much more fantastic way than what even the person had imagined.
Yeah, of course, a lot of scientists today have been raised on science fiction. That's part of what encourages them to do some of the things they do.
And I want to contribute my fantasy about what I would like to see happen one day, and I know it will.
Fantasies of theologians.
Well, we were talking about the childbirth thing, and I want to see science be able to transport babies out of the womb once they're ready.
Oh, like in Star Trek. That's something that Star Trek has never done.
They've never done it, and they have the technology. It pisses me off.
It's very strange.
They had an episode where the girl was in labor, and it was like, just transport it out. I was screaming through the whole thing. She's screaming and having a hard time. Transport the thing out, It just seems obvious to me. But anyway, I need to write them a letter or something.
Probably don't have a woman doing the writing of that particular episode.
No, they like to see him in pain. But yeah, that's a thing I'd like to see science be able to do. And not only that, but transport out bad tissue. A big tumor, just transport it out.
You have a tumor, please lay on the transporter pad.
Yeah, we'll just
get the coordinates and bam.
Yeah, do surgery by transporter.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, they have, getting off on Star Trek, they have a biofilter, which is supposed to take out any harmful biological agents when they transport you up from a planet.
Right.
Why don't they ever use that for medical purposes?
True.
If somebody gets an infection, just transport out.
Well, they have that little thing that goes all around and makes it better.
Because then they won't need a doctor.
And then that shot in the neck.
Yeah.
But the whole thing that I was trying to say is that I hope that there's a change in that happening. It's really hard because in the environment that I'm in all the time, I'm around people who are open-minded, thinking people. So I don't know really in the general population of Christianity what the mass kind of opinion is, but generally I see in like Christian schools and things like that is this tendency to homogenize and to kind of
well, that's the force behind homeschooling,
to discipline out imagination and individuality, and that and what's so sad about that, and I wish if I could get any message out in my lifetime, it would be that
getting it out to the 3 listeners
the unique that your life is God created you as a totally unique person with a totally unique point of view, and that you can contribute something to this world and to the whole of history and humanity, something that nobody else will ever be able to do. And that makes your life valuable. And it makes you, if anything, cling to your uniqueness, because that's what makes you need to be here. You know, we don't need 5 of the same person making the same contribution. We only need that one contribution. And it's like, it saddens me that, in the homeschool situation and also in a lot of Christian schools, that I keep wanting to say breed, but they teach out of the children, just through the socialization and the discipline and everything, that uniqueness. It's Dr. Dobson talks about it in How to Train Up Your Child Without Breaking Their Spirit. And training the will without breaking their spirit. Right. It's a fine line that you walk. And there's so many parents that are just totally unaware of that.
They want their kids to be good more than anything.
Right. So. Instead of wanting to nurture them and grow them up to be the unique person that God created them to be. And the point is that unique means they're going to be like nobody else. You can't compare them to anybody else. They're going to be totally unique, and that's the goal. You want them to achieve that.
Yes.
And you
Being
can give them
is a good thing.
Right. You can give them every possible advantage when they're younger, or you can spend their whole childhood telling them how they have to be somebody else, and then they spend the rest of their adulthood trying to unravel that, horrible mess that you heaped on their head, and hopefully by the time they're 60 or 70 finally get it. You know, you can not even heap the mess, just let them be who they are.
If your theory is correct, then Keaton will be one of the greatest thinkers of his time. He's the only child that comes to church dressed as Superman, Batman, Clark Kent.
Yes.
What else has he come dressed as?
He actually is not even interested in who Keaton is yet. He's playing with being everybody else. But
that's part of the development.
Part of who he is.
So he won't be unique. He'll be like
no, it'll be
somebody else.
No, he will. He is. I mean,
he'll be uniquely like a cartoon character.
That is the whole problem with the whole thing is that I don't care how much you train a kid. You can't train them to be the same. They will be unique. They'll either be unhappy because they're not going to be accepted being who they are, or they'll be happy and well adjusted because people have taught them that they can be who they are. But they're going to end up who they are.
Right.
They're either they're going to be happy and try and hide it, or they're going to, live unhappy and try and hide who they are and be ashamed of it. Yeah. And I don't know. That's my little soapbox.
Well, it's time for another break.
Yep.
Okay.
Past time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian. I'm 5 years old. I think Beyond the Box is a really cool show. We talk about theology and all kinds of stuff about God. You should listen.
Beyond the Box is being brought to you by Quartz Hill School of Theology. Beyond the Box is the theological discussion forum of the faculty and students of Quartz Hill School of Theology. If you would be interested in enrolling, check out our website at theology.edu. We believe that a balanced theological education shouldn't cost you a fortune. We currently offer a Diploma of Biblical Studies, an Associate's degree of Theology, a Bachelor's degree of Theology, and a Master's of Divinity. In addition, we also offer continuing education unit seminars on a quarterly basis. To find out more, visit the website or send an email to info@theology.edu.
Warning: life support systems not active beyond this point.
You are listening to Beyond the Box, a theology discussion group of Quartz Hill School of Theology. If you would like to participate in today's show, have any questions or comments that you would like to add in relationship to today's topic, you can ICQ us at 570-53108, or you can email us during the show at thebox@theology.edu. We also have a toll-free number, 888-987-3100. This information, if you didn't get it down, you can find at www.theology.edu as well as on www.whatson.net.
Beyond the Box, www.whatson.net.
Welcome back.
We are discussing the theological implications of modern science. Yay, I got it right all by myself.
Only taking an hour
You know, it would
and a
have been
half.
easier if you had been taking classes at the School of Theology.
Yeah, well, I'm home taking care of my kids. I already have my theology classes. I have my bachelor's degree.
Yes.
And the equivalent of my master's. So, okay, this is Beyond the Box, and if you want to participate in our discussion,
like you said, this is pee on the box.
Beyond the Box. That too. Beyond
Yes,
the
they
Box.
lock us in here, and so
For those of you with potty brain, it's Beyond the Box. And you can IM us on AOL's Instant Messenger at The Box Show, or you can ICQ us at 570-53108. Email us at thebox@theology.edu, or you can call us toll-free if you're in the United States at 888-987-3100, or if you're in the Antelope Valley, 538-2030.
or if you just like running up your long-distance phone bill.
That's right, the area code 661.
Okay. Let's see.
We
We're talking
have
about cloning.
about 20 minutes left.
Yes. Theological implications of modern science. We've talked a lot about genetic type things, cloning, biology.
What about space exploration?
Yes, that's a good one to go with.
Or extraterrestrials?
Yes. What if you have some Christians who think that the Bible prohibits or makes impossible the possibility of there being extraterrestrial intelligences. That the only place in the universe that there can be intelligence is here, and that if there were intelligence elsewhere, then that would mean the Bible's not true. Why might some Christians think that way, that the Bible prohibits the concept of extraterrestrial intelligence? Have you ever run across people that think that way? Or?
I have run across people who think that way, but they've never been able to give me any kind of scriptural support for that. It's just, I think, a basic species-centric kind of, I don't know, is there a word for that? Human-centric kind of worldview?
Xenophobia, which would be fear of...
Not a fear, but this
others.
Idea that we are the center of the universe, or that we're the only focus of God's attention.
Species-centric would work.
I know there's got to be a word for that.
Something...
But I think that they are the people that I have talked to. I think they just assume it over just generations of belief that way. And it hasn't been until recently, in the last maybe 50 years, where an idea of extraterrestrials was even an issue.
Actually, you had a guy in the late Middle Ages who was burned at the stake for postulating the idea that there could be other planets with people on them.
Poor guy.
Yes, it's very sad. Trying to remember what.
Do you know his name?
I can't remember his name. I've heard the name. It's an unusual name, and so it just has not stuck with me. I haven't heard the story often enough to be able to get it firmly implanted in my head yet. I just know the gist of it, that the poor guy was burned at the stake for postulating that there were other planets and other people on the planets. And so he was accused of heresy and dealt with accordingly.
I think that's funny, too.
Yeah, go ahead.
That so many things are labeled heresy that really don't affect our relationship with God, or even our contract with God, our relationship with God at all. Well, the fact that the fact that extraterrestrials let's assume for sure that we know, that we have a public non-conspiratorial cover-up encounter. Yes. So the majority of the public realizes that there are extraterrestrials and we have to deal with them. It does not change at all our position with God or our theology or anything. It doesn't change it at all.
No, it shouldn't. You have some that think that it would have an impact because they wonder about the atonement. That is, if Jesus came, Jesus, Son of God, he came and died for our sins, then how does God handle his relationship with other?
Well, I think that it would fall under God's normal, all through the Bible pretty much, and Jesus specifically in the New Testament expresses this attitude is, it's none of your business.
Exactly.
It cracks me up whenever I read Jesus' words and stuff, and so often I get, not only from Jesus in the New Testament, but also in the Old Testament, it's not your business. Yeah. It's a need to know basis kind of thing, and some extraterrestrials who's not of the human species, whether they're sent in or not, their relationship with God is not our business,
and there's nothing we can do about it anyway.
Right.
At least not at this point. To some extent, I would argue that those people that are afraid of the potential for extraterrestrials, that their God is too small, that they somehow imagine God would not be able to handle that, that he can only deal with one intelligent species in the entire universe.
I get more of a sense silly. That it's like an older brother or sister who just found out their parent is having another baby.
Yeah.
They're not going to be the center.
It's probably more of an emotional thing.
Because that's the tendency that I seem to get from people is they don't really have any concrete. They treat it almost as a what was that word? A truism, I guess. That it's something that it's just self-evident that it's that way.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Well,
it's truism.
Like that'll work.
A is A.
Yeah, A is A. That's truism, or,
right?
Tautology.
Tautology. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Word.
Most people they almost treat it as though it's a tautology that is just like, well, because that's the way it is, and they've never really gone beyond that to get it, because they've never had anybody question. Saying, well, maybe that's not the way it is.
Right.
And that's generally the impression I get from most people that when this issue comes up.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that I talk to that are firmly convinced, because of the enormity of the universe, that it's highly unlikely that there isn't life elsewhere.
Yeah, the universe is rather on the large
but
side.
then they're so they're treated with they endure a lot of bad-mouthing and disrespect for having that opinion, so they can usually keep
Christianity,
it to themselves.
Right. But the reality is the universe is very, very large. That is, within the Milky Way galaxy alone, you have over 100 billion stars. That's a lot of stars. And then you have over 50 billion other galaxies that we're aware of.
You know what else?
that makes it an incredibly big universe. Plus, I don't know how widely known it is among our listeners, depends on what they read. We know of more planets around other stars than we know in our own solar system. That is, our own solar system has 9 planets. We are now aware of over 40 extraterrestrial or extrasolar planets going around other stars.
Right. You know what I think it is also? I think that our species is so used to hierarchy of powers and just like the fact that we're at the top of the food chain. I think it is a very frightening possibility that we may not be the top of the food chain. I mean, God gave us dominion over this planet.
Right.
But he didn't say over the whole universe.
Yeah.
And there is that possibility if there is other intelligent life.
They're smarter than us.
No, not only
more advanced.
Not only smarter, but that we are
maybe not fallen.
Actually, we do have the assurance from God that we are sons of God and stuff, and so that we have authority and stuff like that. So we're probably protected from some really horrible demise, but we may not be, like I said, the apple of God's eye alone.
Right. That is, he may have lots of children.
He might have lots of apples of his eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he might have more than one bride.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The universe is...
I'm going to get burned as a heretic for saying that.
Well, the reason that people throw the term heresy around at others or label them as a heretic is because then we don't have to deal with reasoned discourse any longer. We just start hunting for firewood.
Right. Well, they say, well, you're a heretic, so I don't have to listen to what you're saying, even if what you're saying is actually valid.
Yeah. Like I said, it shortcuts the potential for discussion or having to listen to what someone may say. If we can just label them as a heretic, we can just ignore them.
Well, how about not calling them a heretic? So let's just say, well, you just have blinders.
Is that a metaphor for something?
It was a reference to the letter that Robin received.
Missed that.
Yeah, it's unlikely he's listening.
I said, is that a metaphor for something?
That was his name that he gave us.
Okay. Yes. Toadies.
Yes. Toady.
Or toadies for God.
Yes.
Hey, better be a toady for God than just a toady.
Yep. But
anyhow.
Yeah. No, it is very species-centric and, for want of a better term, ethnocentric to imagine that we are the only intelligence in the universe and the only planet in the universe that has life of any sort. It is, as large as the universe is, that's an awful waste of real estate if that's the case.
Yep.
The universe is unimaginably big. And like I said, we already know that around, stars within 100 light years of us, there's over 40 planets the size of Jupiter or thereabouts. And that's at the limit of our technology to be able to notice.
But assuming that the pattern is consistent,
ones.
then we're going to be able to.
Chances are most stars have planets, and probably a good percentage of them will have planets that are of the right mass and distance from their sun to allow the development of life. So... Now, it's a secondary issue as to whether or not intelligence is common. It's probably rarer than just life. That is, we don't know if everything's always... once you have life going, is it always going to develop to the point of sentience?
Right.
That's an unknown. But we can't be for sure one way or the other until we're able to start going out there and looking.
But I don't know. I'm still amazed at the attitude of people who are frightened of that. That, just like I say it all the time, every issue almost is like, Christians do not have any reason to be afraid of anything.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Right.
There should be nothing out there that they fear, except
fear itself.
Well,
stepping in front of Mack trucks. I mean, that's
no, that's just stupid.
Right.
I mean, you can fear your own stupidity, I guess. But no, you don't have to fear the occult. You don't have to fear.
If something
anything.
is true, then that's fine.
But greater than that, we have we have the Holy Spirit, and we have the power of God.
Right.
And we have His counsel. There's like. We should be the least fearful, least narrow people on the planet. That's right.
And unfortunately, the tendency is for people hear the word that person's a Christian, they think of someone who is hate-filled, narrow-minded, and a jerk. And that is so unlike what we're called to scripturally.
And what we have the freedom to be.
Right.
That's why the term I've coined for most Christians is that they're flying in cages. It's like they've realized when they got saved that they have a certain amount of freedom that they can fly, and be more than that they are. Mm-hmm. They're free from their sin. They're freed. I'm free. Mm-hmm. Well, no, you're still flying in your cage. Mm-hmm. There's a whole world outside of your cage that you are saying, no, I can't go out there because I'm afraid to. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine how high you can fly if you get out of that cage,
Right.
So that's like my little mental picture of that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll do a book someday. It's a good title.
Go for it. Yep. Do we have any ICQ, IMs of interest or not interest from anybody? Nope.
Not a word.
Not a word.
Nope.
Is Ollie still listening?
I don't know that he's listening. I think he's working on something.
He
and I were
homework.
just chatting.
Yeah. But
How dare he?
Yeah. But
Do his
thinking
homework.
about extraterrestrials, if you go to our website, you'll find an article entitled "Little Green Man with a Question Mark." And the point of the article is that, the Bible is just silent on the whole issue of life elsewhere. When they thought they might have found fossilized bacteria in a rock from Mars, you had a whole section of the Christian community that were up in arms against it and viewing it as, the scientists trying to get rid of God again. And see, that's the other thing that's really ludicrous.
It's like God can be gotten rid of. I mean, even if they tried, it would happen.
But also you see this sense of conspiracy.
Right.
That is, that there's this vast conspiracy of people out there trying to undermine the gospel and undermine Christianity, and that this conspiracy is populated by the scientists and the smart people in the world. And that's stupid. Conspiracies are... That is, if you start assuming that there's some conspiracy, you've stepped beyond the realm of reason. That is, you do not have successful conspiracies of that sort. For instance, last week, NASA had a news conference about the potential of having discovered liquid water on Mars. Now, their news conference had originally been scheduled for yesterday, but they ended up doing it a couple weeks early.
Because people couldn't keep their mouths shut.
Because people couldn't keep their mouths shut. I mean, this was a relatively minor... it's very exciting. It's very interesting. But, it's not, completely earth-shattering news. And yet, it's very...
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, they couldn't keep it secret.
Right.
And so they had to push everything up. That is, they had released the article that was coming out in Science magazine early. They had
same with the whole mapping of the genome.
Stuff.
It's like, we plan a news release to let you know this, and they're telling you right there in the article. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So when the day comes, it's like, old news.
Yeah, it's like what's his name? Watergate conspirator. They were able to keep it quiet for 24 hours. I mean, here they tried to conspire to keep something secret with Watergate, and they could only manage it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. There's not a vast conspiracy out there to hide things from you because it's not possible. I mean, people think that NASA is hiding information about extraterrestrials. That's about the stupidest thing I can imagine. If NASA had evidence of extraterrestrials, you can bet they'd let everybody know. You know why?
Because they
They'd
need
get
funding.
a lot more money that way.
Well,
yes.
no, I think that
you want funding.
No, I think that the belief is that the Air Force or the government itself is suppressing that knowledge.
Yeah,
it's all over cable TV. I mean,
yes,
in search of
right, which is still I don't know. It just strikes me as ludicrous. Conspiracies just don't work. People talk. You have news, you want other people to know.
Yep.
And I'll let you know just as long as you don't tell anybody else.
And then they say,
no,
just don't tell anybody else.
Don't tell anybody else. Okay, I'm just going to tell you this. Robin told me I know it's okay to tell you.
And so it goes.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And so on, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The old shampoo commercial.
Yeah. So, hidden, mysterious information, don't buy it. If it's not out there where everybody can get it, it probably doesn't exist. I mean, even black projects where they are purposely trying to, like military stuff, even that ends up getting out.
They're able to keep that secret longer because they're paying people and they want to keep their jobs to keep their mouth shut.
But there's still stuff about the B-2 that's not public.
Right, but the B-2 itself, I mean, we see them flying around here.
A lot of things that we don't see flying around here.
No, that's true. That's the other thing that's interesting if you think in terms of UFO reports. The vast majority of them are close to military bases. Gee.
Yeah.
What do you suppose that means? They're ours.
Well, no, technically they're right. They are UFOs. They are unidentified. They are flying, and they are objects.
You know what? To me, almost everything in the sky is as a UFO because I can't do as my husband does. Oh, that's a F-18. See how the wings are la-da-da-da-da? It's like...
Actually, some of them you can figure out what it is just from the sound of their engines.
You know the only thing I can identify?
What?
Is the stealth bomber.
Well, that's not bad. Okay. Well, is there anything else?
No, we kind of need to wrap it up because the guys are going to want to lock up. So
that's true.
Please remember, this is our last Saturday here.
Yes, you listen. If you turn in next Saturday at 4 o'clock, you'll hear music. You won't hear us. Of course, if that's your goal is to listen to music, then you'll be happy.
Yes.
But if your goal is to listen to us, then you will be disappointed.
You will have missed us.
Yes, because we will have been on Thursday from 6 to 8. So keep that in mind. Thursday, 6 to 8. We will send out an email to those of you that are on our list. And if you would like a reminder, just email us, and we will add you to the list, and you will get reminders before each show.
You'll also get warnings if they've shut down the studio for some strange reason.
Yeah, like they remodeling. Yeah, they remodeled the place out here.
It looks very nice.
They did a wonderful job.
They look almost professional now.
Yeah.
Not like a bunch of guys sitting around playing video games. Now they're a bunch of guys sitting around playing video games in cubicles.
The guys are very happy. Well, thank you, Quantum Networking Solutions, for allowing us to do this each week. And let's see, what is it that we're talking about next week?
Sexuality in the Bible.
Yes.
It's Sweeps Month.
That's right. Well, I thought starting off a new night, we should try to
be a bit more racy.
Yeah, remind so that people would remember or think in terms of, gee, I need to tune in. Okay, here we go.
You've been listening to Beyond the Box. Theology is not a finished set of dogmatic propositions. Rather, theology is a wide open field of endeavor. God is not tame. He does not easily fit into any set of propositions. A simple equation, a small or large box, nothing can fit who God is. Solomon, as he contemplated the temple he had built, stated, "But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built?" Metaphorically, we might argue the same. God is infinite and we are finite. Thus, we can only comprehend a finite portion of Him. There are more questions than answers in the field of theology, and our job on this program, like theology courses that are offered at Quartz Hill School of Theology, will be more to ask those endless questions than to give any settled answers. We would like to thank you for listening today, and we would invite you to view our website at www.theology.edu. We would also like to thank Quantum Networking Solutions for hosting this program at www.whatson.net. Thank you for listening today. God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.